guess in some way or form, we are all in similar cultures. Like, even if we're different in some way, we end up in the same box, you know? So we all probably share the same artist or go to the same school or our neighbors, you know? So I just think, like, embracing who you are, because someone is always gonna love you no matter who you are.
Hey everyone, I'm Melanie Edney.
And I'm Kolbi-Rae.
And you're watching your favorite show, Life Lessons, on NCRF TV. Today we have a special topic for you today. We're talking all about being true to you, true to yourself. Yeah, we're discussing all the pressures that come along with culture and your identity, the impact of the different cultures that you belong to on who you are and how you perceive yourself. Is there any pressure to be a certain way, act a certain way, feel a certain way because of how other people perceive you? But ultimately, we're trying to get to the place where you can feel comfortable and confident in your unique identity, no matter what cultures you belong to. We're getting into it all, but we do have some really great guests to discuss this with.
So today we have two of our wonderful team members here at NCRF. We have Delia Luna and Sierra Smith. Hi, ladies.
Hey, thank you for having us.
How are we?
Good.
We are excited to be here.
Yay. We are excited for you guys to be here, and we are super excited for this topic. So, Melanie, please introduce us and get us started with what it means to be true to you.
Well, yeah, I think that's hopefully what we're going to discover today and get to the root of what it means to be true to you. But first, let's get into this whole idea of culture, right? Because today we're talking all about the impact of culture on your identity. And I know there's so many things that may come to mind when you think of the word culture. So I'd like to ask the two of you, what words or thoughts or phrases come to mind when you hear the word culture?
Well, I think about like your background, your race, where you're from, that develops like a culture.
For me, when I think about culture, I think about family, or like where you're, kind of like what she said, where your family's from, where you grew up, also, like what places you plan on living in.
Yeah, and these are definitely all aspects of culture. I'm gonna go ahead and read us a little official definition. I do like to do that every now and then here. So the definition of culture, according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, is the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. So notice it says racial, religious, or social group. And I think that when we think about culture, we tend to first notice the racial, the religious part, but not so much also the social groups. And so I'm really excited to see all these different groups and subcultures that create our identity. So let's get into it. Talk about where you developed your foundation when it comes to culture. Where do your cultural influences come from? From being a little person.
Yeah.
Yes. Me? Okay. Well, since I'm biracial, I feel like a lot of my experience, well, just in general, my experience came from my family. So being black and white, I feel like that's where like I developed my culture from. And then also when I started, what was the question?
Yeah, so where did you get your cultural foundations from? So like you said, your family. Family
Yeah.
is typically where we get a lot of our foundations from to begin with.
Yeah.
Maybe, where you grew up, school, anything like that?
Yeah. I think also coming from, I was raised in Long Beach, California, and I feel like that like definitely developed me.
There's
as
definitely a culture there.
Yeah, it is a culture. And the funny thing is that I feel like because I'm biracial, I feel like that was like such a prevalent thing in my life that was discussed like before anybody would ask what my name was. It was, where are you from? Like, where, what's your background, what's your culture and stuff like that. So I feel like that started at a young age to even think about what culture.
And when you said that they were asking where you're from, as in like expecting you to say I'm from Long Beach, or are they expecting you to say I'm black and white?
Yeah, they wanted to without being rude.
What
pretty
are
much.
you?
Yeah, what are you? Yeah, yeah.
Because they see you as ambiguous, basically.
Yeah.
Hey, I've had people straight up say that to me, and I've heard people straight up say that to other people.
Yeah.
I don't know if you find that offensive or not. Like, I always like to know, like, as somebody that is biracial, like, I know a lot of biracial people, like, identify more as, like, they're like, oh, like I identify as black because like that's how I was raised, like that's how I look. And like when people ask what are they, sometimes they get offended. But how do you feel when people, if somebody went up to you and they asked you like, what are you?
I mean, I think as, like, I don't mind now, but as a young kid, I feel like it's kind of puts so much, like, emphasis on things that really shouldn't matter. Like, my race shouldn't be a thing to be a topic of discussion, because then I feel like then you're just trying to navigate how to handle me, I guess, or how to, like, deal with me or whatever. But now I don't really mind. It's funny to me because I'll play on to when people ask, like, oh, so where are you from? I'm like, what do you mean? America? Like, no, but where are you from? And I'm like, California. No, but like, where are you from? And I'm like, dude, like, just say, if you're going to ask, yeah.
Right.
They don't know how to ask the question properly.
Yeah, exactly.
Where do some of your cultural foundations come from?
I feel like for me it was very different because I wasn't born here, so I was born in Mexico. So like when I was a kid, like that's what I knew, you know, and then I came here and all my education has been here. So I feel like for me it's been very different because my family is Hispanic and my family is Mexican, but I feel like I don't fit in a sense because I've been here so long. So like it's like I'm 50-50 and I'm not like 100 on both ends. So it's kind of difficult for me to be like, oh, yeah, like I'm Hispanic, or yeah, like I'm Mexican, when people ask, right? Because it's like, oh, like, where's your family from, or where are you from? And it's like, oh, my family's from Mexico, like this part and whatnot. But then when you speak to people who are Hispanic or who are Mexican, and then they talk about their experiences, like traveling there every year or just visiting their family, it's like I can't really say that because I haven't been there since I was brought here. So it's very different because it's like I don't feel like I fit in on either end. It's just very like I'm adjusting as I go because Hispanics are more traditional. Well, like my family is, and we have certain expectations, and living here is a whole different ballgame. Like everybody has different expectations. It's a more like independent lifestyle, and coming from a very traditional Hispanic household, we are very collectivist. So just being able to navigate through both has been very like difficult. So I think I get it like from both ends. Yeah.
So
Go ahead. That idea, you saying, I don't feel 100% on each side. Like I feel like half this, half that, even though you aren't like in genetics. I think that's such a big part of people's like identity and like their culture and how they like identify themselves, because it's like there's a lot of things in this world that like aren't necessarily things that whatever culture does, if that makes sense. So a lot of people are like, oh, I like feel more like this than this. So like that was really interesting. I just wanted to point that out because that is something I've heard a lot of people say. I've said it myself, that it's like, oh, I don't feel like 100% this because of this and that.
I feel like that comes also back to like the idea where it's like people place you in a box. Right. Like it's like you check up all these boxes and it's like I'm not really fitting in, you know? And if you come kind of like she was saying, right? She's black but she's also white. So it's like you don't fit into one box. It doesn't make you. Like you don't categorize someone based off like your experiences. Like kind of like how you said culture, religion, and like your social groups. Like you're not just one thing, like you're multiple things. So I feel like that just kind of gets you thinking. Like people just assume when you say something, or you're like, oh, I'm Mexican, and then they just assume that you know all these things, and you're like, no, it doesn't work like that.
And it's like we're like building a whole persona of somebody based on just that first bucket, really just that first bucket. And so let's just even take it even deeper, just to see the different layers of cultures. So you were saying like the social groups and whatnot. What other social experiences or groups have also contributed to your identity?
I think for me, school. Like school is very different. Like you get to meet a lot of people with different religions, different like beliefs, different morals, and you learn from them. You learn to be a little bit more open-minded. So at home, like you're taught one thing, like you're taught that it should only be this way. This is how we live. And you grow up that way. Like the only thing you know is your parents. You come home to them, right? So as a kid, you learn like, oh, I should behave this way. Like this is how, you just assume that that's how everybody lives their life based on your home experience. But I feel like as you get older and you, like people who move into college or just live at school, you learn that that's not the way that people live. Like people live differently. Like we have different beliefs. We are all like our own person, so we have different beliefs than our parents. We learn to be a little bit more open-minded about the world, like depending where we live in, and that's how we like develop our morals. So like I have school, maybe like if you did a sport, I played basketball, so even that in itself, like if you're an athlete, it's like you're looked at a certain way. You can't be smart because you're an athlete, right? Or like you can't be smart and you can't be pretty, like you just kind of gotta be one or the other. And like you can't be a girl because it's like, oh my God,
right,
you know, like it's just
on
all
top of
these,
all that.
yeah, on top of all of that, it's like, wait, you're smart, you're pretty, you're a girl, like you play sport.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you know, just all of those things that you don't really like think about just come to play. Yeah. So like school, for me, school was a big thing because I've always been in school. Yeah, that's just for me though.
What about you, Sierra?
I don't
I have another question, a deeper question, and then both of you can answer. Have you ever felt like you had to hide or pressure to hide any part of your cultural identity when you're in a certain setting? Like, oh, I don't feel comfortable expressing this part of myself here.
Yes. For me, being a dreamer. I've always felt like I didn't belong, like growing up, so I never talked about myself like that way. Like it was like, oh, you're a dreamer, and I was like, yes. Like it was something that I've always wanted to hide, like that part of me, because then people ask questions, and it's like, oh, well, like you weren't born here, so you must be an immigrant, or like it's like all these like bad conceptions that come with being someone who wasn't born here. So I've always wanted to hide that piece of me and not talk about it. But like as I got older and like I've seen other people that struggle with the same thing, it's just kind of like you don't see a lot of people talk who are high up, like who are, I don't know, maybe CEOs or people that work in the White House that talk about like how far they've gotten as a dreamer. It kind of inspires you to be able to have pride in that, like where you come from. And as I get older, I learn kind of to be like, oh, okay, like I could influence or I can make a difference or I can inspire other people who are just like me, who probably feel the same way.
So you've been able to take that shame and turn it into pride.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. And you're incredibly brave, so I admire you. If anyone hasn't told you lately, I definitely admire you.
Because that is hard to adjust from a certain situation or just perceptions of what people might put upon you, and then you rise above it and don't allow that to bring you down.
I feel like it's kind of hard. I feel like we all have that one thing that it's kind of like people look at you a certain way because you do something, or just because a piece of you is like a certain way, and people just make assumptions. And it's like, that's not how the world works. Like we all have the same capacity. Like obviously we don't start all at the same level, but we all have the capacity to have the same opportunities or like resources.
Right. There's a lot of people that get to be multifaceted, so it's like you want it to extend to everybody. Not everybody has that grace in society to be like multifaceted and accepted. So that's like a really great observation that like you made about yourself and your situation.
Yeah, I think being biracial and being like quote unquote races that are kind of like polar opposite maybe it was very difficult for me to navigate. Even sometimes like to this day it's kind of difficult. I feel like the way that I naturally speak is very like is like has a southern twang to how I don't know, but it does. And I felt like in a lot of settings, I think like I was told at work, for example, I started young working in corporate America, and they told me because I just spoke naturally because I didn't know any different, and they told me that I need to work on the way that I speak. I need to pretty much sound more proper because the way I spoke was not natural, you know, like it wasn't perceived well over the phone or whatever. And then I realized like it makes me shy away from being who I am in my natural self. Not saying that that's identified as like a race, but it definitely probably I get the way that I speak from where I'm from, like how, you know, And so I feel like that kind of made me like shy away and be more conscious of the way that I articulate my words or like speak and stuff like that. So yeah.
And culture is interesting in that way when different cultures collide, right? Like you were saying, your culture of not only do you have, you know, these two racial cultures that are in somewhat conflict, but now you're in a work culture and now trying to survive and thrive within the culture of that work environment. And so it's just kind of interesting how we kind of have to take this and take this and take this and find alignment to where we can still feel like ourselves, but also feel like we're authentically approaching the situation that we're in.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any strategies for handling that? Or do you feel like you handle that well now?
Me personally, I think I handle it well now. I don't really care what anybody thinks.
All right, that's
And you know what?
Yeah.
And that's like the goal. That should be the goal for everybody.
Yeah, I just genuinely like if you have something like now. I think with the age that we're in now is that I wish you would say something about the way that I speak, because that would go directly to HR. I would definitely we would have conversations about that, you know. But back then, I think also being young and impressionable, and you know, you don't know what's the right thing and whatever. So, you know, I think that I just don't care what anybody thinks. I'm gonna be true to myself. So
Well, you're true to yourself, but I think that you also still exist within the cultural norms of where you are, right? When you're at work, I perceive you as professional, right? And so there's certain there's certain norms in each subculture, and I think that's also a part of it too, like existing as yourself, but within the norms of that culture without losing yourself. I think it is possible, but it's a balancing act.
Because it's like we're in one giant box, and all the different corners of the box are like they all intersect in the middle at some point. So it's like you have to just have a perception of like all the different corners of the box if you're coming from one. But at the end of the day, you want to be yourself, and you can learn how to be yourself while also understanding the other ways in which people work and how they would perceive you, which is like also kind of hard as well, especially being like just people of color. It's just like it's harder that, or just being a woman. It's like if I get emotional or not even get emotional, if I like express like the tiniest bit of passion, it's like calm down. But that's not I'm just because I'm passionate about something doesn't mean that like I've lost all logic, you know? So it's just really interesting that like
and you're getting that because you're a woman and because of you're a woman of color, because you have to remember that calm down.
Right. And it's like that is, and it's crazy because it's really just more of like the way that society has like perpetuated like just stereotypes or just made assumptions about different groups of people. Like, and I think a big thing that contributes to that is like the media, but also the media does that, but also the media flaunts culture in like such a cool way as well. So like, is there any like media as in like television, music, TV, movies, fashion, any of that, like any culture, like pop culture, media culture, any of that, like do you guys feel like strongly about any part of that like has to do with your culture?
I definitely do. I feel like I try not to.
She said, "Let me tell you."
Yeah, let me tell you, because it's something I'm really passionate about. Because it really like people's first impressions that don't, especially with Black people. People's first impressions is what it is they see on the media, and it irritates me so much that when our people will be on these ratchet shows and stuff like that, or like because that's what people will perceive is the cult. That's what they want to. Yeah. Some people want to see that, and have that confirmation of like, see, look, but that's what they doing on here. And I wish that at some point people will rise above that type of entertainment and get to a higher level. I feel like we are only putting ourselves down by I truly feel like all money is not good money, and you should kind of represent for your people a little bit better. But I do definitely feel like that's the one thing I I just cannot entertain.
Well, I think that on the other side, it's like now we've evolved into like there's a lot of women in power in positive lights. There's a lot of black women, black people in positive lights.
Yeah.
That it's like there's just to be like candid, it's like there's like white people that are in the media that are like really they're in power and they're positive, and there's also like white people that aren't so positive.
Yeah.
And it's like we as people of color like all have that same thing, but like the difference is like we have that same spectrum. It's just the difference now is like not now, it's just what's always been is that they will only pay attention to like
to the negative.
Yeah,
so why feed them that, you know what
yeah
I mean? Because I know there's so many,
but it's so
positive
hard
things.
because it's like some of those people like that's how they grew, you know, like that's how they grew up, and
And I
it's
guess
like
it is.
it's like it's the systemic aspect of it all that it's like that's how they grew up, and they're like, oh, like I get to make money, like
True.
I'm making money now existing the way that I've existed in my city, in the culture that I grew up in, like, hey. So it's like hard because it's not fair essentially. But you know, like what are you gonna do?
I think also like you have other platforms that have now came to light that weren't existing in like 10 years ago.
Right.
Like right now, like yes, you don't only rely on like the fact that it happens on television. Like you know how like people back then, or like not back then, but like
You're back then. I got you.
yes, like we
Like
would watch on the
pre
news.
TikTok.
Yes, that's what I was getting at.
Like
TikTok.
Yeah.
like
So,
BT
we see it
before
on
TikTok.
television for what it is, and we take it for what it is. Like we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know what other people have seen. We don't know. But now we have Instagram. We have Instagram Reels. We have TikTok. We have like other ways to connect with the world, or like to get information from the world through there. So like everything that people try to hide or the media tries to hide comes to light, you know. And I think that's something that has made us, even now, like the generations that are coming, made us a little bit more open-minded about the world, because we weren't only depending or relying on the fact that we just saw one thing. Like we're all on the internet, like we see everything that happens, even like the bad, the good, the ugly, you know. So being able to just see that and be like, okay, like it's not just one person's perspective, it's different perspectives, and you're able to draw your own conclusion about everything that's happening because of that.
But it makes me wonder too, you know, are the dominant conclusions being drawn still the dominant images in media? Because I'll take it a step further. You know, you could talk about how people of color are portrayed, or black people in particular. Let's talk about just as Americans, right? So like that's a culture that we all belong to, right?
Yeah.
And if you've ever traveled like abroad, do you feel like you might be perceived or treated a certain way as an American?
Right.
And that's being fed to them from the media. I still feel like there's just a whole American persona that the world has.
Yeah, like they think that we're like ignorant, and they think that we're like rich and ignorant and selfish, and it's like no, but
and then don't say that you're from LA, and don't say that
too.
you're from LA.
Oh, that's a thing in itself.
You must think that I just automatically live next to a celebrity. Like,
yeah, they do.
We go shopping together,
And they think that we don't work hard too.
No,
I don't like the rent that you have to pay out here. You have to work
to live in California.
Oh my gosh, I went to Texas like a couple of weeks ago, and we went out, like me and my cousins, right? And then we were kind of introducing ourselves to people, just like, you know, random people. And then they were like, "Oh, you're from California." And it was like, "Oh no!" Like,
oh no,
are you
you
gonna
know
say
what's
that?
coming.
And they were like, "Oh my god, like you guys have a bunch of good stuff. You guys go out a lot. Like you guys party." And like I'm like, realistically, have you seen the economy? Like everything here is expensive. Like no, like it's not the way it's perceived, like online all the time. No, that's not how it works.
Oh, definitely not at all. Just being in New York and me saying I'm from California, people are like, oh, well, the way that I act, I guess, and present myself, people are like, oh, like that makes sense. And I'm like,
That makes sense.
I'm like,
What does
What does that mean? Right.
and I'm like, I'm gonna take that as a compliment, because maybe
what
I'm just sitting here like I'm so, because people are like, oh, Californians are so like relaxed and chill and whatever, and I'm like, okay, I'll go with that, okay. But then they're like, oh, like this, that, and you're like, no.
It's
like
not how it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and back in the day, and times have changed, but before, people would think, because of the way I talk, oh, you sound like a Valley girl. And I'm like, if you even know, like, the Valley is a place. I grew up on the whole other side of town. I actually never even went to the Valley until I was at least 20. So, but it's all these social cues that people take to, once again, box you. Like you were saying, it's easier for people to say, I think I know who this person is.
Right.
Easier than getting to know who this person is.
Yes.
no, right.
Because people automatically want to figure you out before anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just
Before
to
they
know
even
how
get
to
to know
how
you.
to come at you. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And it's like you have to spend the whole time with whoever that is, like proving to them that you're not that.
Yes.
Like I've definitely been like, oh, like, because when people don't really know, when they like kind of know California, I'm like, oh, Orange County, and they're like, oh, like you're an Orange County girl, and I'm like, all right. I'm like, well, I like hate everybody in Orange County, so I'm not really like them at all, but sure, like. Like, it's okay.
I think what we're getting into now is the difference between social norms within a culture and stereotypes. And both exist. Like, there are some social norms within a culture, but if I don't fit into your stereotype, now all of a sudden you have conflict with feeling like I belong to this culture. And it's weird.
Like, even just as like a person of color, like you being into something that's like, not so POC, whether it's like you like rock music or you like you enjoy going to the beach or something.
Or how about this? Yeah. The nerd persona, in the black community is kind of looked at like, oh, you're a square, like, why can't I be smart? Why can't I be interested in learning? Why can't I be interested in these things?
Yeah, I agree.
And like, oh, but I love the California, like, Mexican American, Black American aesthetic, like, is so tea. I love it. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Like the gold hoops, lip liner, chain, all that.
Do we all have lip liner?
I know, right. And it's like, it's so tea, but that's not me all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, sometimes I want to be that, and sometimes but I'm also not really that girl at all either. So it's like, you just like, but it's cool because it's like, that aesthetic was created, and now we all have like taken a little bit
now we see it
from
online and we're like, oh my god, like I love how her hair is.
Yeah.
So like it's like, oh, I want to get my hair like that.
Yeah.
Or I love how they do their makeup. Or I love how their eyes look. And it just like enhances somebody else's culture, which is nice because you didn't see that before.
Yeah.
But I must bring up, did you guys see you guys know like the clean girl aesthetic?
Yes.
And everybody was like, Mexican and Black girls been doing this for a long time. It's just a slick back. It's the kind of stuff that sends me. I'm like, yeah, girl, it's just a slick back. Like, what are you talking about?
You just really made me think about something too. Do you ever feel like a culture that you belong to is like, can be put out there for a trend or shelved at any moment, but it's like, this is me and this is who I am. So when it's not trendy anymore, sometimes it feels like certain cultures are here. And
it's like a trend. It's like they're in and out.
But it's like, but this is who I am. So
right.
Like, how do you feel about that?
Right. Which is like interesting about nowadays, because in the internet, like you were saying, like you can see all of the like different cultures and really like it, and people will start to emulate it. But then when it's not a trend anymore, it's like, well, that's actually like how I grew up wearing my hair and how I grew up doing my makeup. Like, what am I gonna do now? Like, I'm not doing that over there. I'm gonna stay over here. But
that's how I feel about a culture that I didn't mention. So my father's from Nigeria. My mom's from LA. So I kind of have this blended culture of ethnicities. And it's very interesting because in the past, I don't know, 5 years or so, this Afrobeats music has become very popular, And so now African culture is a trendy culture, which was not a thing. I will tell you, that was not a thing when I was growing up. And so it's like I'm hearing these, this music that has influences of songs that I was hearing on the radio when I was growing up. And then I was just kind of thinking, because there was one point where it was kind of trendy, but it wasn't really trendy. It was popular in the East Coast, like in New York. It was popular in Oakland and certain places. And now it's like trending worldwide. But then I'm thinking like, I'm already feeling like it's already starting to die out, but I'm just like, wow, it's just like, so it's like, am I just supposed to be proud that my culture had its time?
Yeah.
Or should I how should you feel about that?
I think it's very like weird. Like it's a very like weird feeling. Cause kind of like you said, like you see like the stuff that you grew up with, and you were always like, oh, maybe I don't want to talk about this, and then you
And
see
now
it
everyone's
online,
doing it, right?
And you're like, wait a minute, like I would have been popular, like if I had.
Oh my
something.
gosh! I used to wear my
Yeah.
traditional clothes. Now, I can go online and I can find traditional Nigerian clothes everywhere, and
it's so
really
bizarre because it's like I used to be ashamed of it, but it's like, wait a minute, like these people actually like it, like it just kind of makes you, I think, accept a little bit more of who you are. Just seeing it, because you're like, oh, like my culture is beautiful, like it has all these things that other people appreciate that I guess you take for granted sometimes. But yeah.
But does it take other people appreciating it, for it to be worth appreciating?
I don't know. Like,
Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I understand.
It's kind of like, was it always worthy of appreciation? And like now they're validating it. Is it?
Yeah.
We're
I think
seeking
it's
that
that.
validation.
I think it was always worthy,
Yeah.
but it is now being validated.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
think
like,
so too.
you can tell yourself that it's worthy all day. You and your family and those that
Yeah.
you know in your culture, like, can tell you that thing is cool and that thing is great and that's beautiful and you should be proud all day.
Yeah.
But when it like makes it to like the outside world, it's like extra
different.
validation.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
oh, okay,
different.
like
it's a different feeling.
it's not just my bubble that thinks that this is cool.
Yeah.
Like I saw a TikTok the other day of like just some like white girl. She was like, y'all getting the boho box braids. She was like, I'm obsessed. I watch every video about boho box braids because they look so beautiful. And I'm like, that is so crazy. Because
Now, let me ask you a question. What's the difference between, appropriation versus admiration?
you making a video being like, I love your boho box braids. The line is when you get them and they're not made for your hair. That's the line. Or it's like, y'all know the beauty supply hoops? Everybody knows the beauty supply hoops. Yeah. Okay. Like, like Mexican American girls and Black American girls been wearing those for so long. It's like,
Yeah.
and it's just an earring, but like, if I see a girl that is not, really in that vibe, didn't grow up in like that type, and she's wearing the beauty supply earrings with the lip liner and the beater and the jorts, I'm like, all right, girl, like.
Sierra got something to say.
Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna. And it shouldn't. I don't know if I should care or not, but it really does irritate me so much. Is when people try to, become a culture vulture kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And even like with the accent too, it's like, girl, like, and it's terrible because nobody sounds like that from wherever you're trying to sound like. They don't sound like it, and to me that's like insulting, and it's like
insulting.
it's very
That's what it is.
insulting. Yeah, it's like, and then it's because you can hop in and hop out.
That's
like
what
you want to be like us until you got to be like us when the stuff really like you
when
you
it's
know
hard.
exactly. So for me it actually really irritates me when people get the braids and gets the this and that, even for me, because I know how I look, and I know if you don't know me, you would never think that I'm what I am. And so even for me, like I come to this world cautiously about like caring about like if I'm like not accepted, because whatever, but like how I present myself around people that don't know what my background is, or let them know what it is. So then, because I would be offended if I'm this whatever I look like, talking how I talk, and dress like I dress, or have my hair in braids and stuff like that, because you have to be cautious of of somebody else's feelings.
And it's gonna get harder because there's a lot more, just because with the integration of everybody, it's like a beautiful thing, but it's like interesting because there's a lot of like mixed people, whether they're like Mexican and white, Mexican and black, black and white, any mix that, because there's a lot of different mixes, like especially nowadays, some people really don't present as the culture that they identify with, and then they feel like they have to like explain themselves all the time when they like want to get braids, or they want to wear like traditional clothing, or they want to do something that it might not be how they're presenting. It's like it's very, that's what's interesting now, because it's like with cancel culture too, it's like, are you a culture vulture? Are you vulturing right now, or are you appreciating right now? Like, you never know.
I think you guys helped me understand where the insulting part of it comes from. It's because there's some of these aspects of what's now popular culture that I may have felt like I was discriminated against for doing those things, and it's like things that you feel like were a struggle for you, because someone says they're cool now, it's okay. But no, that doesn't take away my struggle.
Yeah.
Right.
Like my struggle is still there. And even more so, my struggle will be there again when you decide that you're on to the next trend and this is still who I am.
It's like goes all the way down to like bodies, like, you know, just as like people, like just as women of color, like we're curvier, and that was in.
Yeah.
And now everybody's like Pilates body, and it's like, all right, well, I'm still shaped like this, so it's like, I enjoy Pilates as like a form of exercise, like I think it's cute or whatever, but I am realistic, and I'm like this is not for me.
Yeah, like realistic.
I'm like, this is not gonna be giving me the Pilates arm, okay? Like, I need to go to the gym and work out like Megan Thee Stallion, like, because that's how I'm built. You know what I mean? But like, it's crazy because it's like it really is. Almost everything is like a part of our culture, and different cultures that you identify with, and it's like it's always changing, and some of it is appreciated, and some of it's a trend, and it's really like
changing.
interesting. But I love that you say that sometimes it feels validating, because I think that sometimes, because I also feel like that, I'm like, wow, like this is really great that like other people are noticing and appreciating, but sometimes it's hard.
I feel like there's a fine line between it's like, oh, like, look, they like to do this. And then it's like when they take it a step further, you're like, wait a minute.
Right.
Like, you don't understand, so why are you doing this?
Right.
You know? Like, you don't take the time to actually understand.
Right.
Or when they try to make it seem like they're the ones that created it and they don't give
that's another
to
issue.
where it comes from. Like she was
too.
saying with the clean girl era.
I've been,
saying
you know,
that.
I've been,
like people like, oh, clean girl aesthetic. I'm like, I've
or
been
like
doing that for years.
twerking, or like twerking. We were in the 5th grade. That's how we danced. So like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? Like, what is like? It's so these are the weird things, and so I think the goal is to find that pride in your cultural identity, so that it's strong no matter who else says it's cool or not, right? So that brings us to our last topic, and that's developing a positive relationship with your cultural identity. And so I'd love for us to just kind of go around and just talk about some of the positive influences or impacts your cultural identity, your cultures have had on who you are and your perception of yourself. Anyone can go first.
I gotta think about that one. Just do you guys?
For me, I would say I'm very blessed. Like, as I grow up, I learned that I'm very blessed to speak 2 languages, to be fluent in speaking 2 languages. Because, like, if we go to the doctor, when I was younger, like, we would go to the doctor, and, like, there'd be doctors or nurses who wouldn't speak Spanish. And it was kind of hard for me to sit there, like, as an 8-year-old and be like, Mom, I don't know how you say this, but, like, you know, just delivering news to your parents. Imagine, like, being an 8-year-old delivering news because, like, they couldn't speak Spanish, you know? So just being able to do that, to me, like, I feel like it's one of, like, the things I love most about myself is that I could communicate to 2 different parts of my community. I think also, like, being not, like, I know I'm not perfect, but being able to set like a standard for my siblings or everybody else that is like me, because it is hard, and I feel like just being able to be vocal about it and being able to share my experience, I'm able to help other people, you know, not feel so alone, or know that like you can do it. There is resources, there is opportunities for you to succeed. Like, it's not just all difficult, you know. Yeah, I think that's
beautiful. And it's coming from the one who said that they didn't fit in on either side. You being bilingual is an asset. In 2024, that is an asset.
I would say, honestly, from where I come from, I feel like it created I came from a very diverse area, so I was able to connect with so many different cultures and stuff like that. And then also, where I was raised, it made me see so much poverty and stuff, which created like work ethic within me to make sure that I'm never going to be within that realm. But I feel like the culture of like actually where I was raised built me and made me who I am. And, you know, I'm proud of me because it made me stronger, smarter, more ambitious, you know, despite what I've seen around me. Yeah,
That's awesome.
You guys like that.
And yeah, I feel like my mom, like, I always am shouting out her on this podcast because she's the GOAT. But my mom always growing up, like, I grew up with Chino Hills. If anybody knows what Chino Hills is, you know what I'm talking about. Chino Hills is very predominantly white. And my mom always was like, I want you to be you. And, like, you need to be proud of you. And, like, I didn't really know what that meant growing up. All I know was, like, nobody can make me doubt myself in general. But then, like, moving away for college and just kind of, like, finding myself and my aesthetic and everything, it's just, like, when I go to New York, every like, black person there is, like, they know where they're from. I don't. I don't. So it's, like, I think growing up, I have become more and more proud of being a Black American woman because the culture that, like, Black culture, like, Black American culture is tea. Oh my God. I love it. Oh my God.
I mean, Black culture is pop culture right now.
It is, but it's been
But
pop.
realistically,
but it's
from the beginning of time.
It's been pop culture.
There's so
in
many
America.
influences
And it's
Yeah.
like
America.
it's like being a Black woman. It's just like the older I get, it's like I feel like I'm becoming a woman, but I'm becoming an even better Black woman, and just knowing that, like, I have a sense of self and I'm, like, growing as a person, but I'm also growing as a black woman. Hair is tea, body is tea, clothes are tea, jewelry's tea. Everything is, like, so great. Food, it's just, like, America has its its faults, but I do love the culture that us Black Americans have made within the struggle of being American. And, like, it's just that, like, growing up and just being, I still have a lot more to learn, obviously, but it's just, like, it's so awesome. Like, I love being Black American, and I'll say it all day.
That is a beautiful thing for so many reasons on so many levels. That's really beautiful. And then for me, I'll even take it a step further. I've always embraced, my Nigerian side, but with this, I don't know, like, world where it's being welcomed by the world, from the music to the food. I went to the mall the other day, and I got, and they have plantain and jollof rice at the mall. This would never happen when I was growing up, and so it's like this, this culture, and let's be real, similar to, being a Black American, which is the other side of me, being African is not something that's necessarily been, like, celebrated, in American
Definitely
culture, and that's a whole other thing as well. And so to see, the world feeling like it's a beautiful, like, African culture is a beautiful thing, makes me want to celebrate that more as well. And then also just we party, and that's that side of me. We party. They're just, like, Nigerian people are some of the most fun-loving, like, just loving people you'll ever find, and I feel like that's a part of my identity. Like, I just want to be a lover, and I want to be able to spread love. And then really quickly, because there's a subculture that, I never really thought about how much of an impact it's had on me. And that was growing up. I was in theater. And so,
Me too. The theater kid culture is crazy.
But when you're in high school, the theater kids are kind of the weird kids, and,
but
et cetera.
It's like, well, I can speak. What about you?
So that's what I was gonna say.
In front of people, public speaking,
My
that's a gift.
foundation of communication was born in the theater. I learned how to project. I learned how to articulate my words. It helps me to communicate with people from different other cultural identities. And I am so thankful for that subculture. So that's an example of just one of those social subcultures that can really just contribute to your identity. But it's a beautiful thing. I have one more question for everyone. We are NCRF, and of course we promote education. And so how do you think that our education and our school systems can do a better job? I know you're not, like, counselors or administrators, so I'm not expecting an official answer, but just thinking, like, from the student standpoint, you work with students. What can they do to really help students to be more comfortable in their own skin?
For me, I will be going to get my master's this fall. And I want to be a marriage and family therapist, but also a professional counselor. Yeah. So for me, I think it's learning how to get to know them, because I feel like in academics, like, it's so much in, like, oh my God, math. or oh my god, this person isn't good in English or history or all of that. But I feel like getting to know the student as an individual is just very important as much as it is for like academics, because you get to know where they're coming from. You get to meet them halfway where they're at. Like I had students who are ELD students who just come into the country and don't know anything about English, or there's students who do speak English and who are coming into the country, and their math or their academics in wherever they're coming from is very different than American academics. So I think just being able to like see where they're from and getting to know them as people will really help and excel in, or help them succeed wherever they're at, because you meet their needs, right? So getting to know them, or just going in there and not knowing anything about them and just assuming, is not going to help them at all.
I agree 100% with what you're saying. I think that a lot of times counselors or teachers and stuff, they give up on students too, and a lot of times they come from like some kind of like dysfunctional background or something that's clearly happening in their lives, and I think a lot of time, or I think the counselors and the personnels or whatever, they need to, like you were saying, take more time with the students and seeing what is actually going on with them mentally.
It's a beautiful thing, and hopefully, you know, by having more conversations like these, you know, we can help the next generation to really be able to be comfortable being true to themselves. And so
they have a lot at their fingertips, so
They do.
And like
They do.
just us as semi-educators and future educators and being connected to educators, you know, we can always encourage them to encourage students to find knowledge on their own outside of the classroom, find what interests them, because I think that's what's really important. And that also it makes you more prideful in your identity, in your culture, and all the subcultures that you belong to. But aside from
I do have one more thing. I think that's why NCRF is such a good thing too, because they give you so many different careers.
shameless.
They give you so many different like careers that you could, opportunities that you can that you would never think to think of, like with the STEAM program and stuff like that. So I think that NCRF having different resources like that,
opportunity to discover yourself and
exactly,
who that is.
exactly,
Or what you like.
Yeah. Well, this is the part where we wrap it up.
Yeah, so does anybody have any final thoughts? We really appreciate you guys coming on today. We want to just go around and everybody, you know, do a nice little sign off, your final thoughts, your
advice
final
for students, though, you know, give advice to you. If you were 18 years old, you know, your 18-year-old you, where were you in your struggle with identity and culture and figuring out who you were? Speak to that person.
To my 18-year-old self. If I could tell my 18-year-old self something, it would be to embrace like what I think is bad, what I think is ugly, like, and embrace who I am, because no one's perfect. We're all different, you know. We don't just check one box. Like, I guess in some way or form, we are all in similar cultures. Like, even if we're different in some way, we end up in the same box, you know. So we all probably share the same artists, or go to the same school, or our neighbors, you know. So I just think like embracing who you are, because someone is always gonna love you no matter who you are. Like, you probably think that some part of you is ugly or some part of you is difficult, and it's not like that.
I think no one can follow up with
I
that.
know
That's,
she
like,
has these
perfectly-
drop the mic moments.
Exactly. I don't think I have anything to say for that. I agree.
You could say.
I agree is right.
Yeah, I agree. You got any final thoughts?
You know, Delia really
Covered it all.
You know, I guess that's it. I guess
She-
that's it. You know?
Be true to yourself.
Be true to yourself.
Yeah.
And the only thing I would add is, you know, lead with empathy. Try to actually genuinely connect with people. I think one of the best ways to feel like you will be accepted is to make others feel like they're accepted. You know, build real connections, build real relationships, and, you know, real bonds with people, because I think that they'll be more open to learning who you are as well. What's that Maya Angelou quote? It's one of my favorite quotes. People don't always remember what you said. They remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
Be kind.
Yeah, be kind.
Yes.
I think it goes both ways. So thank you so much for joining us. This was a awesome episode. Thank you for joining us as always. As always, please leave comments. Let us know any other topics you want us to discuss. And in the meantime, stay true to you. And you're watching Life Lessons on NCRF TV.
Woo woo!